College. It's been amazing to see the change in an institution, and he's going to tell you all about this transition from multiple colleges into one consolidated college, and it kind of flows from what we heard about one college with 7 campuses. Now you're going to hear about one district with 7 colleges? 7?
That's what we had, yeah.
That now has become one college, and the reasons for it. So would you welcome, please, Dr. Chomak?
Yeah, thanks, Jay, and appreciate the invitation, and good to see all of you. I was telling Jay a few minutes ago, when we didn't set out to do this, and that there wasn't like a point in time when we sat down and said the goal was to consolidate our 7 independently accredited institutions into a single college. Although don't ask people back home because they don't believe that. They're absolutely certain that was always the agenda. And I was telling that too. I appreciate telling the story, and some of you, like Ivy Tech, you went through those things thinking a long time ago as it relates to it. But I just a couple of things. Dallas College, we're technically now about 15 months old, and as I like to remind our board, we're still changing diapers at this age, meaning that we really haven't solved all of the system issues that come with a transformation. When I went and met with Bill Whelan and the folks down in Atlanta at SAC COC to say that we were going to make this change, I made it clear up front we're not doing this for financial reasons, which she said that's pretty rare because usually it's a financial issue behind the mergers, as kind of Mary talked about, and other things that happened. Well, that really wasn't the case at all. It was, and I'll get into why we did it. Honestly, that matters a whole lot more than what we did as we get there. And there were a lot of data points that we had collected to kind of get it why. So I appreciate your feedback. I think it's a story, but the story is not about consolidation. The story is really about how do we better meet the needs of individuals, how do we serve our community better, and how do we particularly help our employers be successful. And that was kind of the framing of everything that we did. And we really started on this this journey. There was an article in the paper back in Dallas that said my North Star was 0 student debt. That's not true. Our North Star was really addressing income disparity within our community, how we ensure that everyone had an opportunity for a better job, to help our community be stronger, and to really meet the needs of the entire community. So when we got into this, it's as pointed out earlier, no one wants to change, and part of what we kind of did was we didn't always telegraph fully what we thought might be happening next along the way. Because we needed people to understand why at every step of the way we were doing what we're doing. You start jumping too far ahead, then you confuse the what with the why, and that can become a challenge, and that's sometimes hard to do. Just a little bit about Dallas, just some facts. 55 years old, opened our doors in '65, 7 colleges. You see roughly about a $500 million budget. This past year we served a little over 118,000 students through there. Some drop off from previous years, frankly, with COVID, mostly in adults over the age of 26, and particularly some of our credential areas. So that's a little bit about who we were. We knew that we had inefficiencies built into our effort. We were duplicating things, but we actually thought some of that was a good thing at the time. And it wasn't really till we got into some of the work and looking at it that while we didn't do it for dollars, we've seen right away some dramatic improvements in how we're able to meet the needs of students. And I'll kind of go through this. This is just a quick timeline which shows our various colleges as they opened, went through accreditation. We now are offering baccalaureate. We started our first program in 2019, adding BSN this year. We'll add about 3 or 4 more over the next couple of years. I won't see that because I'm retiring March 1, but it's in place to do this. So I want to get a little bit into the why, and honestly, I'm just going to scratch the surface of this, and we'd be happy to share some of the data work that we put into this. I'll touch on a number of them, or at least going to get to it. But as I mentioned, our North Star was really looking at income disparity within the community. It was a big challenge because 80% of our students come from underserved population. We had high schools where 99.9% of the students were economically disadvantaged within those schools in urban setting, and that overall it's actually about 9.99 when we started this work of high school graduating seniors would ever go on to get a post-secondary credential. And I'll hit on some a few things as we look at it. We were leading a lot of people behind overall in the community. And then we created something in 2014 called our Labor Market Intelligence Center. We now have about 7, I think, full-time people. All they do is labor market studies related to jobs, the economy, what's going on. We actually now supply the data for our governor's office, for others in the state, and partner with a lot of folks that you knew well. But we did I could talk hours on this, but we did a really in-depth look at all the jobs, 222,000 created in 1 year in North Texas, as to the skill sets required for those jobs, and then started working backwards about what was the employee base look like, where was the gap, and what needed to be in place. And we felt like we were hitting a whopping 5% of the overall need that was there. So, you know, we realized we were part of the problem. Our processes were confusing to students. We had a changing demographic. We had 40% of our population were now non-English speakers within their homes. People didn't understand career pathways. As we got data backing all this in terms of what was there. As we looked at the poorest areas, we actually started a lot of our work there first. We really weren't motivated, as I said, by financial issues, but really how we could meet the need. I'm going to show you kind of this. So we created something I'll share with you here in a few minutes called the Career Connected Learner Network, which is what we wanted as the model for how students move through from non-high school graduate to high school graduates all the way to career jobs that are out there. But when we mapped it with 7 institutions, it became unmappable as such. And what we realize is that autonomy is the enemy. You can just stop right there. Autonomy is the enemy, period, in just about everything that we do. That's there, and the more autonomous our institutions tried to be, the worse they were at solving the problems of not just students but employers and others within the community. So this is our model today as we look at our Career Connected Learner Network. I'm not going to talk a lot about this, but basically going back into the 8th grade in the upper left, coming with people without a high school diploma here in the lower left, all the way through whether they partner universities or employers that we now work at, integrated with throughout the way. The thing I want to mention here for us, everywhere there's a dotted line, there's usually a complete breakdown in systems. So no one owns a single dotted line on this. So it became our job is to take ownership of just I mean, there are just obvious things that we didn't have to invent, and that's where autonomy is a problem. You want to collaborate, not recreate along the way, all the way through the systems. Although a few cases we did have to do it, but. I mean, even things I'll just point out, public transportation for us, we didn't have to invent it, but it turned out it was hard as hell to connect our systems to the public transportation system to get it work. It took us about 18 months to work all that out, because higher ed data, like a lot of organizations, are designed to work vertical, not horizontal. We don't have B2B systems in place, and therefore you have to figure out a way to work around that in many cases. I'll share just a little bit. Some parts of what we did engage outside consultants to help with. And we work with folks to help us really take a look at our educational plan, take all of our labor market data, take a look at what the workforce needs were, take a look at the skills, look at our organization structure, look at what it would take, look at our program clusters, look at how we had structured that, and then kind of literally we'd meet at 6 o'clock in the morning in my office and whiteboard out what a new structure needed to look like, and then we'd erase it and walk away. And we did this for weeks and weeks and weeks as we tried to take the data and think through how we could become more nimble, efficient, and effective network connecting folks along the way. Just real quickly, I mean, just some examples of misalignment that we were looking at when we were looking at the data. The red is the average job openings. The white is what our program completers working like. Then we have the gap and the surplus that's there. And so we were really looking at that. That's just AES. We did the same thing for industry-based certifications. We did others, and that's a whole other presentation at some point. But this was a real situation. So the driver, the thing that ultimately made this a slam dunk situation for me, literally in a course of 15 minutes, I went from maybe we need to look at consolidation to, if we don't do it, people are paying a terrible price that's there. And what happened was I was reading a grant proposal that one of our folks had written. On the page 2, it was designed to automate reverse transfer. Familiar with the process, and so we had a funder that was willing to help us with that. But then it said about 2,000 students had applied for reverse transfer, but only 128 had been granted in the previous year. And I'm going, whoa, that's hard, because you got to do the request of the university, you got to have it sent back to the college. You don't do it unless you're pretty certain that you've got everything worked out. And so why was there an 84% failure rate, which is what the actual percent was of that? And it turned out this was the reason, that our students were taking an a la carte approach to education. They were picking and choosing. And it turned out this wasn't a few. This was 24,000 of our students were going to multiple of our institutions, not counting the other 12 universities that are in the North Texas area that they were picking from, meaning that they were getting all the credits, but they couldn't get the degree because they didn't have 25% from any one institution along the way. So in 15 minutes, literally I said, show me that data. Let me see it. This was the middle of June. I went to the board at a meeting 2 weeks later and said, we need to consolidate. Came back with a plan. They approved it at our August board meeting. That's how quickly we moved when we realized, and we went and looked, and on that day, we had 821 students eligible to graduate, except they didn't have enough credits from anyone. So our folks said, well, they can just take more hours. Really? That's the solution. To use up more of your Pell eligibility and risk going into greater debt. So our process there was actually pretty quick. I went to the board with the initial plan. We had it approved in August. We went to SAC COC in December, and basically we began to work it with the engaging process with SAC. So this is the what, and I don't think this matters a whole lot. But they approved us with no recommendations at all, I think 11 months from the day we started with the process. So that was the technical side. That's the least important part of this, getting there. Our folks thought it was important because you needed SAC's approval, but from a practical point of view, it wasn't. So we had a lot of things going on. I personally went out and just met with had conversations at all of our locations. We created something called the World Cafes, where we brought people together to provide input. What we did when we started talking about the problems, we found out that a lot of people wanted to help and be a part of the solution to get there. And I can get into this. We did something called a student experience study, where we trained 70 people to follow students for 6 months, talk to them every week and debrief them. We did focus groups every 2 weeks, so we were doing a lot of things. We engaged a consulting group to do surveys every 6 weeks, as we were really trying to figure out what was going on. But our goal was to come up with a structure that would really begin to solve the barriers, the problems that we saw that were getting in the way. We had a lot of students with negative experience, 76%. That's not great, what you want to hear. And that was the breakdown. They were admissions related, advising related, communication related, financial aid related, website related, just about everything was a challenge. And part of that was 7 times. There were 7. And what was happening is they would go to one college and be told something, what they thought it would apply to the others. Turns out it didn't in that case, just like you with that. You add to that, we partnered with Aunt Bertha. They just changed their name to something else to really understand what our student needs were. We had about 11% homeless, 39% food insecure. Transportation was a big challenge. Books, which we dealt with that mental health, other areas where we did not ignore any of these. We now provide all of our textbooks, learning materials day one. You see what Barnes & Noble's doing in that space. Others are as well. We really try to address the issues that were getting in the way because we saw inequity. It was hurting our people of color to a greater extent than it was others within our community, and they were being left behind at a faster pace. We spent a lot of time looking at how to redesign our educational pathways and getting there. So this wasn't just a consolidation. We restructured and created 7 schools. I will say if I had to do this over again, I would have picked any number but 7, because we had 7 colleges and people still confused that somehow this is related to those. Had nothing at all to do with the institutions, but to really restructure around workforce. We really built them, you can imagine the internal battle a lot was over what do we call them, which is how we end up majoring on the minor sometime. I mean, I didn't care. What we wanted to do was to really get at looking at how we design them around labor market demands, how we could really build in the systems and feedback. And I won't get into all this as well. created something brand new now, I think, an academic incubator that all it does is now create new programs within that space. They churn them out on a regular basis. Groups working in very specific areas that are there. But the call them swirl students or whatever, what we wanted to do was not necessarily shut that down, but again, our structure created problems around a lot of that, and actually drove more people to go to more locations than we thought. And so it's kind of logical if you think about it. So 7 colleges spread around. They did not all offer the same thing. So if you wanted vet tech, you went to one location. If we had RNs at 3, we had EMTs at 2, and automotive was at 3, but again different at each place. Well, if you lived on the opposite side of the county, that's a 30 to 45 minute drive. It can be an hour or longer to get across there. You don't want to take all your classes at that far location if you can take any of them close at hand by. So we built a system that actually unintentionally caused students to take hours that did not end up counting as part of that 25% with the varied degree structure that's there. So this solved just about all of that. Then we consolidated all the programs. So now one nursing, one automotive, even though the locations may vary in automotive. One site has Toyota, Honda, one site has GM, one has Fiat, Chrysler, and so forth.
So Joe, in the school's model is a very university model, and, because you have those different areas, whereas a smaller college would have had departments, you had schools, which then allowed you across your 7 institutions to more centralize how you would do things. Is that right?
Yeah, that's exactly right. So, and it allowed us to deliver across at all locations. So initially, when we got baccalaureate authority, it was only for Brookhaven College. Well, now that applies, and so we were only going to deliver our degree basically at that one location. Now we deliver it across all locations within the area. So the school model was really one around organization and focus, and making sure that we were really focusing on the right areas. And now we get into the hard part, which is there turned out there were a lot of problems structurally with some of it. And I won't get into all the details, but I'll just show you this as a simple one. So when we looked at our excluding faculty, looked at our layers, we had 9 layers. In other words, if I'm layer 1 as Chancellor, there was someone 9 layers down from me in the organization. Hard to feel empowered if you're 9 levels down. So we picked an arbitrary number of 7, and we said we would restructure everything to 7. And we did. There are now 7 levels, and you can argue. Well, people argue that wasn't enough, but we said no. The other thing we did in-depth look at span of control. I don't have a slide on this, but so it turned out that 65% of our supervisors were supervising 4 people or less. 35% were supervising 2 people or less. And so we said, again, arbitrary, ideal is between 8 and 10. We'll let you get by with 6, but we're going to start consolidating operations around that. And so we took advantage to begin to really think about, in this case, we used Boston Consulting Group. Now, we'll say a lot of consulting firms turned us down. When we started getting into class scheduling, when we started getting into faculty load and things like that, who all turned us down on their list? McKinsey, Bain, Deloitte, all said they won't help us because they knew that the faculty would badmouth them for getting involved, and therefore they basically said we have our own reputation to protect. protect in this, and therefore we're not going to engage in something where folks are can badmouth the process or the outcome. We did look at. We then began to look at roles that obviously we had 7 of everything, so we had a lot of duplication that's there. I want to be honest. We completely underestimated the duplication, quite frankly, and we I did ask the board to do a severance package, 6-month severance from any duplicated position. We provided placement services. We did a lot of things. But it ended up being now, we've already had to act on 550 folks in duplicated positions. It will hit 700 before we're through. That's there. But more telling is we realized we were woefully short of student-facing positions, advisors, coaches, folks. So we've now hired over 300 of those in addition to what we had before. It was a mismatch between what was there. So on one hand, you could say, well, we looked at, depending on how you ran the math, that we saved about $37 million, but we spent every penny of that on student-facing and other support. We really beefed up our Salesforce instance and created a whole staff now that does that. We beefed up our social media. I think we've got now 4 full-time people. That's all they do is all day and deal with that. Well, that's kind of what we did on our severance and situation different. But I say that we really did try to recognize and support our people, even what was a tough time. Most folks left with a pretty sizable check. That's it. I mentioned something. So when we got ready, started thinking about this, and I was pretty certain this is where we were going to go. I looked for organizations that had done a similar consolidation, and I identified a hospital system, identified a bank system, and an automotive set of dealerships. And so I interviewed the CEO, spent about 100 hours of my time personally interviewing the CEOs. And so of those, and from that, I learned pretty much that they all had about the same experience, and turned out it was pretty much the same experience that we had as well. They all said there's out of all their employees, most groups saw the benefit, the customers saw the benefit, the consumers, patients, whatever it was, clients that were out there. But there was one group that didn't appreciate it at all, and that's this group right here. The college presidents. And Jay's known me a long time. I can be very direct. And so I brought him in. I said, here's where we're going, folks. And I said, you have 2 options. You can lead or leave. Let me repeat it. You can lead or leave. And one said, I'm leaving. I said, I'll help you. No hard feelings. You need to do what you need to do, but you understand that once we go here, I need you in a leadership role, helping us figure out and solve the problem and stepping up to do that. And so it wasn't meant to be, I was just transparent with them, and that I didn't want folks to think there were any options that were there. Once we asked the board, there was really no turning back, and didn't want to get there. But this kind of lays out where we our structure with basically a provost, a vice provost for student success, a vice chancellor for workforce and advancement, and executive vice chancellor who will now move up to be the new chancellor. The board appointed him June 1 to succeed me next March. That's there. Again, budgetary impact. I usually don't talk about numbers because the fact of the matter is we're going to spend everything that we're going to save and invest it back into what we're doing. Virtually every investment, as I said earlier, is student facing in some form, either in the physical world or in the virtual world, or it's related to data tracking that's in there. We also invested. Professional development was the other big area that we did, putting in there for all levels with that. Our academic incubator, I think that's now has about 40 full-time people with instructional designers and the folks working there. We did invest some in OER development that was there, but that was maybe 100 people total of those other areas. The bulk of it was all folks dealing directly with students. That was there. We said from the beginning that we weren't going to pull punches. We were going to be honest, transparent, direct in everything that we did or said. A couple of times, I mentioned early on, I did underestimate, and our projections underestimated some of the duplication. And part of it wasn't our fault. It was, we're a big organization, and with that comes big bureaucracy. And so we discovered we had a lot of deans with 3 administrative assistants. And how that happened was they hired somebody that wasn't exactly competent. And so they compensated for that by hiring another. And they compensated for that one by hiring another. And pretty soon we had a lot of people, and that happened not just in admins, it happened in all kinds of areas. So when we underestimated, what we really did was consolidate that. We did a lot of talking, engaging, internal and external, and don't underestimate the importance of external communication. We overemphasized both. I did town hall meetings every 3 weeks once we got going in the process virtually, and we have about 3,700 full-time employees. 3,000 would attend every one of them, so they were well attended. We had to break up how based on priority of how we rolled different things out. And it ended up taking longer than we thought. Part of it is because sometimes we prioritize selecting internal people, but when there wasn't an internal selection, then we had to go back out and do a search. We really hadn't planned for that extra time. We really tried to focus, invest a lot initially. We're really not there yet on the professional development side, but all around empowering. I hired for the top 39 people 6 executive coaching for all of those for 1 year to engage in that. We did a lot of work to support that, and then really continued to try to support the process. So this just kind of gets to where we were with the. Now, one of the odd things is that we sent in our materials, let's see if it has it there, it's actually, I think it was March 17th, but declared that we were going into pandemic mode on March 16th. So literally, they ended up, the two almost perfectly coincided, which wasn't, we had already planned because it was the due date when the materials was sacked, so we had to hit that deadline to get it in. But thank goodness we already had designed the structure that I showed you earlier, because I'll tell you what happened here, just to put it point. So we announced we were going into remote, both delivery of services and instruction. One college says, no, we're not. We're shutting down everything. We're just shutting it down. Another said, we're not shutting down anything. We're going to continue to meet in person, face to face. So about 2 days later, I said, okay, here's the new structure. Here's the interim provost, here's the interim student success, vice chancellor. We will all now start acting as a single organization at that point. But you can just see how that gets just confusing to everybody. I mean, our students are going to multiple campuses. One just said, we're going to cancel all your classes. The other one just said, no, we're, and literally next door to each other, we're going to keep business as usual. And so that was really the part of the driver with us. Again, no surprise, we needed people closest to the work going on to be committed to the change, and I have to say, really proud of our leadership team, those that have really stepped up into the role. I'd say about 80% of the folks in the roles have worked out well. We'll make a few tweaks as we get there. Always talking, as I said, regular communication, over communicate through what we're doing. Probably the least affected. It turned out it was actually more than we thought, because when we got into even the finance area, we decided we could outsource some things that we had never considered before either, and we ended up doing this. This is not yet resolved. It seems like every day we have a policy issue that's still emerging, and we're even with a person whose job is 100%, all she does is deal with policy, we still are coming across things that are designed for an old structure to get there. And let me tell you, people notice and will pick it apart. So deal with it. It goes without saying, it really is all about people at the end of it. We can talk about structure, we can talk about programs, talk about alignment, but really it's about people. And I personally invested a lot of time in that, meeting with our faculty leadership. Now, even with that said, a group of rogue faculty, not associated with our faculty senate or that organization, decided to do a vote of no confidence on me as well, to which the other groups all shouted them down, and it had no impact. But it does not always. The leader of this group, and I don't mean to stereotype here, but he was 81 and been with us 55 years. So and he change to him was something that occurred 30 years ago. Was recent change. So the issue there. Let me stop just on this, because I'd really love to kind of maybe a little dialogue and conversation as we get into it. I think what we actually did a good job of was engaging our local community, and we didn't talk always big picture. We talked why. And I spent a lot of time now, for those of you that don't have local tax support, we do. That's 60% of my budget. So I spend a lot of time out thanking taxpayers for that. I tell them, here's how much you paid, here's how we're using this, these are the problems that we're solving for you with our dollars. And we particularly focused on tailoring it to meet local needs that were there and that alignment. We particularly addressed the how we were investing in programs to help students be successful, and really working to stop the confusion that is there. I think I'll go to here. So our goal was, while this looks like a lot, it's, if you were to map out your organization, you'll find there's a lot of connections and things going on as well. We just really engaged a lot of these folks to make sure that they were part of the conversation as we went there, and made sure that they understood why we were doing what we were doing in order to better meet the needs. So let me stop. And,
Okay, questions?
What was it like meeting with all the CEOs of those companies during those interview sessions?
They were really eager to share with me what their experience was, and all about the same. The one who took it the furthest was the CEO of a hospital group now with I think they're now with 400 locations. Started with one hospital. He was a CEO of a Presbyterian in Dallas, and now has grown that as one of the largest hospital systems in the country. And you know, he got into great detail about what he learned, where the problems were. I brought in not just him then, I brought in some of his top people to meet with our leadership team in various areas to talk about HR issues, to talk about data issues, to different things that we got into. Banking was a little bit interesting as well. This was a Southern regional bank that by design had created state-branded banks through a single board that was everywhere from Arizona all the way across the Southwest U.S. And now they basically are all branches of a single bank, and a lot of the same things of really helping understand what do you keep local, what do you need to look at. The more interesting one in some ways was the automotive, Sewell Automotive. If you've been in the Dallas area, you'll see them, of how they elevated the Sewell name to be what, and downplayed BMW, Audi, Mercedes, all the various dealerships that they own to create an overarching brand around the corporate name. But it was all more than branding. It was, every single one of them was a complete restructuring of how they meet the needs of consumers, of clients, of customers, whoever it was, which was our goal as well.
I really like his chart here. It's busy, but it depends on your level of institution. Some of you are at institutions that have 5,000 enrollment. Some of you are in institutions that might have 30,000 enrollment. But you have a similar community that has similar type of spokes. And in Dallas, of course, that's a huge issue for a
I'd argue it's
Chancellor.
Easier if you didn't have quite the scale. Because, I mean, just, you know, food bank, when we partnered with that and opening up food pantries, we had to do it a lot. You know, we now have 7 that we operate, plus 7 SNAP offices that are located within them. So,
But the important thing about that is you realize that your institution touched every single one of those.
Yeah.
And that if you were going to be truly moving into this new model, you had to talk to each of your constituents here and
well,
get their
we
feedback.
built the network for the student. Normally, we would leave it up to the student in the past to find the food pantry, to find public transportation, to navigate, and in some cases, the jobs, or to handle. I could get into, we partnered with Accredited to do a redesign of our transfer efforts in the area, and a number of different things. So.
Yeah. A question I would have for Joe is how did he orchestrate getting the feedback from those different entities that then led to putting it into a process for helping the student?
Yeah, that was a combination of being very intentional. We did bring in the Boston Consulting Group to help do surveys, to help do engagements, and some of those areas. They could get it done faster, quicker, get the feedback. We could adapt it quicker. We also engaged our own people. I mentioned we trained, and our own people did the training of 70 investigators to follow students and to really understand what they were going through. We used something with employers called compression planning, which a group out of Pittsburgh, we trained our folks to do that, but it's about an hour and a half process.
With the
Employers, we've now done it with about 400
Wow.
employers as well as our K-12 partners. We started doing that with them as well to design pathways. So we now have, I believe we're at 88 schools. This year we graduated 2,066 students with associate's degrees, the same time they graduated from high school. So so we're continuing to build out that, and I can get into why that matters, and that was part of our redesign. I mean, it gets to a basic fact. If we can't ever provide 3 meals a day at the college, they can in high school. We can't do door-to-door transportation, they can in high school, and I can go on and on.
Sure.
Let's say. So.
Okay, we're about ready for lunch.
Does this
But,
make sense? Give me some feedback, because I'm really trying to figure out the best way to tell the story, and it not be about us, but really be about students and about the community that we serve. What would be helpful there?
Well, it's a very difficult model to draw out, so.
It is hard.
I think with the student at the center, feeding into your different organizations, your different funnels and pipelines, and how Dallas College is connected to everything, I think it's, given the difficulty of it, this is fairly clear.
Yeah. With the Ivy Tech folks here, and I apologize for not knowing exactly how your students, can they reach to each college and get credits at each?
We're one system. Well, singly accredited.
You're singly accredited.
The whole state, 19 campuses.
Yeah,
All
that
of
was
our
done
systems,
quite
all
a
of our
while
systems
back,
are the
as
same.
I
Yeah.
recall.
So they can walk into any campus and pull them up.
Yeah.
So you've done a lot of this thinking many years ago. Are you finding yourself that it works? Is there things that you need to be tweaking especially in the virtual world that we've had to live in since COVID? Has that worked all right for you?
I think we're at a situation where, one of the first things he said, that autonomy. Autonomy to us means a lot of different things.
Yeah.
So, we're far down the road on autonomy and systems and structure
Sure.
and all of those. And so then we have more probably a view of what autonomy we have on the campuses because we fit in a community. So Travis's community looks very different than my community, and so
Yeah.
we have that autonomy.
Yep.
So, and that is important. So when you say you don't need autonomy, I think you have to, what does that actually mean?
Yeah, and what we describe it as, that we're looking to do the opposite of hoarding. I don't always have a word for it, but it is, and try never to do anything alone. So I've actually said we won't apply for a grant any longer just as the institution. We'll only do it in collaboration with someone else as just kind of something I've imposed to force every time us to be thinking about who we can include, who we can bring in partnership with us in order to tell you a funny story though about the autonomy. So I've been saying that for years, that autonomy is the enemy. And somebody said, I heard a friend of yours talk about you in California, it's Brian King. And he said you said that the economy was the enemy. I said, no, not the economy. That's our friend.
Well, folks, let's give Joe a big round of applause. And Joe's around if you want to ask him some questions. We'll have lunch. You can